I used to laugh at the idea of ice walls, not just doubt them, mock them. I said the people who believed in them were afraid of the unknown, clinging to myths because reality felt too small. I made videos, comments, jokes. I spoke with confidence, the kind that doesn't tremble because it has never been tested. Whenever someone mentioned edges of the world, hidden boundaries, or ancient warnings, I rolled my eyes and said humanity had outgrown fairy tales. I believed the universe was cold, empty, mechanical. No throne, no judgment, no center, just endless space and random motion. The night I died began like any other. No thunder, no warning. My body failed quietly, embarrassingly, like a machine shutting down mid-task. One moment I was standing. The next I was collapsing. And then there was a sharp, tearing sensation, as if something inside me was being pulled loose. I remember thinking, this is it? This is death? There was no panic yet, just disbelief. My last conscious thought on Earth was still arrogant. People make too much of this. Then the world went dark, but not the kind of dark I expected. It wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, a darkness that felt aware of me. I realized I was no longer breathing, yet I was conscious, more conscious than I had ever been. My thoughts were razor sharp. My memories lined up perfectly. No blur, no confusion. That's when fear arrived. Not screaming fear, but the cold realization that I was no longer in control. I felt myself moving, not falling, not flying, being drawn. There was no direction like up or down, only toward. And the closer I moved, the more the darkness changed. It began to glow at the edges, as if light were trying to break through but was being held back by something immense. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to stop. I wanted my body back. None of those wants mattered. As the glow intensified, heat followed, not painful at first, but absolute, like standing near something ancient and alive. I sensed a boundary ahead, vast beyond scale, stretching endlessly in every direction. And then I saw it. A wall, not ice, not stone, fire. It rose higher than comprehension, not flickering like ordinary flames, but standing firm, layered, alive. The fire was white at its core, red and gold at its edges, moving with intelligence, not chaos. It wasn't consuming anything. It was guarding. And the moment I understood that, the laughter I once carried inside me evaporated completely. Because this wall was not around the world. It was around a throne. And somehow, impossibly, I knew it was his. The closer I was drawn, the more impossible the wall became. It did not behave like fire. It did not waver or thin. It did not burn away into smoke. It stood. Every flame was stacked upon another, rising in ordered layers, forming a living barrier that stretched endlessly to my left and right. There was no seam, no opening, no weakness. I instinctively understood something that terrified me more than the heat itself. This wall was not meant to be crossed casually. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was a boundary set by will. I remembered every time I had laughed at the word boundary, every time I said humans should have no limits, every time I mocked ancient warnings about edges, gates, and guarded places. Standing there, if standing is even the right word, I realized how small my certainty had always been. This was not myth. This was design. The heat intensified, not scorching my skin, but pressing directly into my awareness. It wasn't attacking me. It was revealing me. I felt exposed in a way I had never known. Thoughts I had buried surfaced instantly. Every motive behind my mockery, every smug thrill I got from tearing others down, Every moment I chose ridicule over humility. It all rose up at once, clear and undeniable. I tried to argue, to justify myself, but no words came. There was no audience to persuade here. Beyond the wall, I could see the glow of something greater. Not a shape yet, just a presence so overwhelming that it bent everything around it. The fire did not exist to keep him in. It existed to keep what was unworthy out. That understanding struck me like a verdict. I hadn't been dragged here by accident. I had been brought to the edge on purpose. Then I realized something worse. The wall was not passive. It was aware of me. The flames shifted, not violently, but deliberately, as if acknowledging my arrival. And with that acknowledgement came a pressure on my being so intense that I felt myself shrinking, not physically, but inwardly. All my confidence collapsed. All my sarcasm evaporated. I could not hide behind humor here. I could not intellectualize my way out. I could not pretend this was a hallucination. I had mocked the idea of divine authority. Now I was standing before its perimeter, and I knew, with a certainty deeper than fear, that I did not decide whether I would go further. Something, or someone, beyond the wall would. I expected a voice. Thunder, a command that would shatter me. Instead, there was silence, complete and absolute. Yet in that silence, communication happened, not through sound, but through knowing. The wall of fire did not speak at me. It spoke through me. Every flame carried understanding, and that understanding poured into me all at once. I suddenly knew what the fire was for. It was not punishment. It was truth. Nothing false could pass through it. No performance, no excuses, no self-deception. The fire did not need to burn lies away. They simply could not exist there. And that realization crushed me more than any judgment ever could. I had lived wrapped in carefully curated versions of myself, convincing others, and myself, that I was honest because I was bold. But here, boldness meant nothing. Only truth mattered. As I hovered before the wall, memories began to play, not in sequence, but in weight. The moments that mattered rose first. Times I mocked others to feel superior. Times I dismissed the sacred because it inconvenienced my worldview. Times I felt something stir inside me, a quiet sense that there might be more, and I silenced it with laughter. Each memory passed through the fire before reaching me, stripped of spin, reduced to its core intention. And every time, the intention was exposed. Pride. That was the word I could not escape. Not curiosity, not skepticism. Pride. I had not searched for truth. I had protected my image. I had not questioned because I wanted answers. I questioned because I wanted to win. The fire made no accusation. It simply showed me what was always there. And somehow, that was worse. Beyond the wall, the presence grew clearer. I could not see the throne yet, but I could feel its center pulling on everything that existed. The fire bowed toward it, not in submission born of fear, but in perfect alignment. This wall did not guard chaos. It guarded order so pure that even fire became obedient. And then something happened that broke me completely. The fire parted, just slightly. Not enough to let me through. Just enough to let something through to me. A weight descended. Not physical, but moral. The full awareness of my life settled on me at once, and I realized the most terrifying truth of all. I had always known better. Not in detail, not in doctrine, but in conscience. Every time I mocked, I had felt a flicker of resistance inside myself, a warning, a hesitation. I had laughed over it every time. I tried to lower myself, kneel, bow, disappear, but there was nowhere to hide. The fire held me exactly where I was. And in that stillness, I understood that I was not being examined to gather information. I was being examined because judgment was near. The fire did not move further, but my perception changed. It was as if my eyes were finally allowed to adjust. What had once been an overwhelming glow beyond the wall began to take form, not fully, not clearly, but enough to make my entire being recoil. There was a center beyond the fire, a point from which everything else drew meaning. And at that center was the throne. I cannot describe it the way objects are described. It was not made of gold or stone, yet all precious things seemed to borrow their value from it. It did not sit in space. Space arranged itself around it. The fire was not a separate barrier. It was an extension of the throne's authority, radiating outward like the edge of an immeasurable sun. And seated upon it was presence itself. I could not look directly, not because I was forbidden, but because my being resisted the exposure. Every instinct I had screamed that to see fully would be to be fully known, and I was already struggling under the weight of what had been revealed. This was not a ruler demanding attention. This was truth personified. And truth does not demand, it simply is. The moment I understood whose throne it was, my former mockery became unbearable. I had joked about kings, about divine authority, about the idea of anyone ruling over reality itself. I had said power was an illusion humans invented to feel safe. Standing there, I realized how backwards my thinking had been. Power was not seized here. It was inherent, unquestionable, complete. Then came awareness, not just of him, but of myself in relation to him. The distance between us was infinite, yet I was known entirely. There was no effort in that knowing, no searching. I was present, therefore I was seen. And with that came a grief so deep it felt like collapse, not because I was hated, but because I was honored with awareness I had never deserved. The fire intensified again, not outward but inward. I felt myself unraveling, every false identity falling away. I was not my opinions. I was not my sarcasm. I was not my followers, my comments, my confidence. I was a soul, stripped and small, hovering at the edge of something eternal. And then, from the throne, attention turned toward me. It was not sudden. It was not dramatic. It was simply complete. When that attention rested on me, time ceased to have meaning. I felt as though all of history paused, not because it needed to, but because nothing else mattered in that moment. I had not been brought here to debate. I had been brought here to be measured, and I knew, before anything was spoken, before anything was decided, that my mockery had never reached him. It had only revealed me. The attention from the throne did not crush me, but it exposed a contrast so severe it felt unbearable. In that gaze, I understood something I had never even considered in life. The fire was not there because what lay beyond it was fragile. It was there because what lay beyond it was pure. The wall did not exist out of fear. It existed out of mercy. And then I was shown why. Not with images at first, but with understanding. I was allowed to sense what existed beyond the fire, what the throne governed. It was not endless power in the way humans imagine it. It was order so perfect that nothing conflicted, nothing decayed, nothing lied. Every being there existed in harmony with what it was created to be. No pretending, no posturing, no rebellion hidden behind clever words. Everything was aligned. And I realized, with a sinking clarity, that I could not survive there as I was. The fire was not keeping me out because I was small. It was keeping me out because I was disordered. My pride, my mockery, my delight in tearing down mystery, all of it would shatter in that realm like glass under pressure. The fire was not punishment. It was filtration. And I had never passed through anything like that in my entire existence. Then, I was shown myself as I had been seen from the beginning. I saw the moment I first chose ridicule over wonder. I saw how it hardened into habit. I saw how people who questioned things humbly had threatened me, not because they were wrong, but because they reminded me of something I refused to kneel before. I had said I wanted truth, but what I really wanted was control. Control over narratives. Control over meaning. Control over not having to answer to anyone greater than myself. The throne did not accuse me. That was the most terrifying part. There was no anger, no disappointment, no outrage, just absolute clarity. And in that clarity, I finally understood. Judgment was not an act that would happen to me. Judgment was the moment I could no longer lie about who I was, and that moment had already arrived. The fire surged, not toward me, but around me, forming a complete boundary. I felt held in place, suspended at the edge of decision. I knew then that I was not here to be destroyed. I was here to be confronted. The question was not whether the throne was real. The question was whether I would finally stop mocking what I did not want to submit to. And for the first time since I had arrived, I felt something break inside me. Not fear, defiance. I tried to hold on to that defiance. It felt familiar, like armor I had worn my whole life. If I could just resist, if I could keep one corner of myself untouched, then maybe I could still claim I had not been conquered. I told myself that surrender would mean losing everything I was, that bowing would erase me, that submission was weakness, but the throne did not react to my resistance. That was when defiance began to crumble. I realized something devastating. My rebellion was irrelevant. It did not threaten him. It did not delay anything. It did not even register as opposition. The throne was not waiting for me to submit in order to prove dominance. It already was. My defiance only prolonged my own exposure to the truth I was trying to avoid. And then, without sound, without motion, the fire changed. It did not open. It did not close. It clarified. Suddenly I understood the finality of where I was. This was not a debate chamber. This was not a testing ground. This was the edge between what could exist in his presence and what could not. I was not being asked to agree. I was being asked to yield, not to ideas, not to doctrine, to reality itself. That's when I felt it. Grief, not grief for punishment. Grief for wasted life. For every moment I could have chosen humility and didn't. For every time wonder knocked and I answered with laughter. For every soul I had encouraged to mock instead of seek. The weight of that realization collapsed my defiance instantly. It did not shatter it violently. It dissolved it quietly, like salt in water. And for the first time, I did what I had never done in life. I stopped arguing. I did not kneel physically. I could not. But inwardly, something in me folded. I admitted the truth without excuse, without spin, without comparison to others. I did not say I was misunderstood. I did not say I meant well. I did not say I was better than most. I simply was. And in that naked honesty, I felt smaller than ever, yet strangely lighter. The fire no longer pressed as heavily. It did not withdraw, but it no longer crushed. I sensed that something had shifted, not in him, but in me. Then attention from the throne intensified once more. This time, it did not feel like measurement. It felt like response. And I knew, whatever happened next, this was the moment my eternity would turn. The response from the throne did not come as words at first. It came as permission. A permission I had never earned, never demanded, never believed in. The fire did something I did not expect. It did not retreat, but it softened, not in strength, but in posture, like a guard who remains alert yet allows a message to pass. And then I understood. The fire was not only judgment, it was obedience. From beyond it, something moved, not forward, not outward, but toward me. I did not see a form clearly, yet I knew exactly who it was. Recognition did not come from sight. It came from truth aligning with truth. The presence that approached carried authority equal to the throne, yet it felt different. Where the throne revealed holiness, this presence carried intent, purpose, directed toward restoration. And suddenly, without sound, a knowing entered me that shattered what remained of my pride. I had not mocked the wall of fire alone. I had mocked the mercy that stood before it. I understood then that the wall was not the final word. It was the last defense before grace. The reason the fire existed was not to keep sinners forever away, but to ensure that nothing false entered unchanged. And for the first time, I saw myself not as an enemy, but as a soul that had reached the edge too broken to pretend anymore. The presence did not excuse me. It did not rewrite my past. It did not soften the truth of who I had been. But it did something far more terrifying and beautiful. It acknowledged me, not as a mocker, not as a skeptic, not as an opponent, as someone who now saw. I felt the full weight of my life remain intact, and yet I was not rejected. That realization undid me completely. If condemnation had come, I would have accepted it. If destruction had followed, I would have understood. But this mercy that did not deny justice, this was unbearable in the best and worst way. Then I sensed something else. Time. For the first time since arriving, time pressed back into existence. Not fully, but enough to signal urgency. A narrowing. A closing. I knew instinctively that I could not remain there, that I was not being permitted to pass the fire. Not yet. Not like this. Something in me was unfinished. The presence did not speak with words, but the message was unmistakable. You have seen the boundary. You have known the throne. You will return. And with that knowing came a sorrow sharper than fear. The sorrow of leaving truth after finally encountering it. I did not want to go back. I did not want the noise, the arrogance, the laughter. I did not want to forget. As the fire brightened one final time, I felt myself being pulled away, not cast out, not expelled, but sent. And I knew. This was not an ending. It was a warning wrapped in mercy. I returned to my body like a gasp tearing through water. Pain rushed in first. Sharp, overwhelming, humiliating. Air burned my lungs. Sound crashed into me. Hands were on my chest. Voices shouting. A room spinning back into existence. But none of that mattered. I knew, before I even opened my eyes, that I had been allowed back for a reason. The world felt smaller, not less meaningful, just exposed. The confidence I once wore like armor was gone. In its place was a quiet terror, not of death, but of truth. I remembered the fire, not as a symbol, not as a story, as a reality more solid than the floor beneath my feet. I remembered the throne, not as an image, but as a center that everything answers to whether it admits it or not. People later asked me what I saw. I chose my words carefully. I did not describe the fire in detail to impress. I did not speak of the throne to sound mystical. I said only what mattered. There are boundaries we did not invent. Some are not ice. Some are not stone. Some are mercy standing in flames. I no longer laugh at mystery. Not because I am afraid of questions, but because I have seen what stands behind them. Mockery is easy when you think nothing listens. I know now that everything does, not in paranoia, but in order. Truth does not chase you. It waits at the edge of what you are willing to surrender. I was not sent back to frighten people. I was sent back to warn mockers like I once was. You don't have to believe in walls. But one day, you will stand at a boundary, and you will not be the one who decides what it is made of. This is why I speak now with restraint instead of ridicule, why I question with humility instead of laughter, why I no longer confuse confidence with courage. I have seen the fire that guards the throne, and I survived not because I was right, but because mercy chose to answer, before judgment did.